All right, we got a new book tonight. Trippy's over here getting himself comfortable, so you'll hear him scratching. This is Frogs, Mosquitoes, Flies, and Lies. Lauren tells a Bible story with Art Compere. And this was signed by the author and given to Rachel. And it says here that the story is dedicated. This book is dedicated to my granddaughter, Lauren Elizabeth Compere, and all the other boys and girls who spend most of their time in wheelchairs. I was all settled in front of the auditorium to start another Bible story when I heard Janet scream, "Don't put that frog on me," she yelled, and she ran to me and said, "I'm going to tell Mrs. Everett that Hampton has a frog in his pocket and it's going to put it on me." She started back up the aisle, but stopped when Hampton jumped in front of her. "Okay, Tattletale," he said, "I will put it outside." "Wait, Hampton," I shouted, "bring the frog up here." He did, and I told him to hold it for everybody to see. And then I asked him, "Did I ever tell you about the time I lived in Egypt, and the frogs got in my room, and in my closet, and in my shoes, and everywhere else?" "No," they all said. "Tell us about it." I waited until Hampton put the frog back in his pocket, and then I started the story. Carmine was my best friend, but I was Egyptian and he was a Hebrew slave. Daddy and Mother let me play with her, but they would not let me spend the night. "You will come back smelling like sheep," Daddy said. The truth is that Carmen's pet lamb did not smell like sheep at all. In fact, it didn't even smell like a lamb. Just before going to bed, Carmen put her mother's perfume on Lambo, that was its name, and brushed it with her hairbrush. Then she hopped in bed, and Lambo hopped in bed with her, and that's how Carmine slept, snuggled up close to her pet lamb. "Daddy, may I have a pet lamb?" I asked every time I came back from playing with Carmen. "You ask that every time you come back," Daddy said. "Carmen has a pet lamb because she is Hebrew. Hebrews are shepherds. They know how to take care of sheep. You can have a donkey for a pet. He is at the barn now waiting for you to come and pet him." And then he laughed. I looked at Mother. "Mother," I said, "tell Daddy to quit making fun of me. I want a pet lamb that I can bring to my room the way Carmen lets Lambo come into her room. Please let me have a pet lamb." Lambo is easy to take care of. She eats out of Carmen's hand. She plays on the bed with her and sleeps with her. She even jumps rope with Carmen and me. Sometimes Carmen and Lambo jump while another girl and I swing the rope. Sometimes Carmen and another girl swing the rope while Lambo and I jump. And sometimes we all three jump while two other girls swing the rope. Please, Daddy, let me have a pet lamb. I promise to take care of it and wipe its feet before it comes in the house. Daddy laughed again. "When I was your age," he said, "I had a pet frog." Does your daddy ever tease you? My daddy teases me sometimes. I tease back. Just for that, I said, "I'm going down to the Nile and get a bucket of frogs and give them all to you." With that, I went straight to my room. Mother went with me and sat on the bed beside me. "Lauren, sweetheart," she said, "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you look so sad. I will tell you anyway. Daddy is saving up money to buy you a lamb. He almost has enough. In fact, he had enough one time and was about to buy you a lamb, but bought the donkey instead. You see, he has to have a donkey to carry things to market and bring things back from market. As soon as he bought the donkey, he started saving money again for a lamb. He loves you very much and is going to buy you a pet lamb as soon as he gets enough money. The reason he teases you the way he does is because he knows he might surprise you with a pet lamb any day now. Mother got up to go, but stopped at the door and looked back. Remember to act surprised when Daddy comes home with a lamb, she said, because you're not supposed to know. I was glad Mother told me. I knew I would have to keep asking, because if I quit, Daddy would think that I already knew. I also knew he would keep teasing me and that I would keep teasing him back. But of course, I had no intentions of getting a bucket of frogs. However, Mother must have thought I meant what I said, and suddenly I heard her scream. "Lauren," she shouted, "get in here this minute!" I dropped and ran to the kitchen. "The next time you go to the Nile and get a bucket of frogs, put a top on it so they will not leap out," she said. "I did not get a bucket of frogs," I said. "I was only joking." "Well then, where did all these frogs come from?" she asked. "Look, they're in my kneading trough, they're in my oven, they're everywhere." About that time, Daddy came in. "I have never seen so many frogs in all my life," he said. "They're everywhere. The donkey will not eat because the frogs are in his feeding trough." "Then Carmen's father was right," I said. "He said Moses told them that if the Pharaoh did not let the Hebrew slaves go free, frogs were going to cover the ground." Daddy reached out and touched me on the nose. "Do not believe everything those Hebrew slaves tell you," he said. "They are jealous because their God is stronger than theirs. They tell stories to make their God look strong. But he is not strong at all. If he were strong, why are they still slaves?" "Carmen is my best friend," I said. "She does not tell me things that are not true. She even lets me pet Lambo." "Do not start again about a pet lamb," Daddy said. Just then a frog leapt on top of the table, and Daddy picked it up and held it out towards me. "This would make a good pet," he said, laughing. "You can put it in your pocket and take it wherever you go." I backed away. "Mother, may I spend the night with Carmen?" I asked. "Frogs are all over my bed." "There will be no more frogs at Carmen's house than here." "There will be more frogs at Carmen's house than here," Daddy said. "They live nearer the Nile than we do." "There will not be any frogs in Carmen's house," I said to her. "Her daddy said so." "In that case, go," Daddy said. "But you'll be back before more frogs will be there than here." I ran to my room as fast as I could, and I got something to sleep in and took off for Carmen's house. I waited to get as far down the road as I could before they changed their mind and called me back. I had wanted to spend the night with Carmen and Lambo for a long time, and finally they said I could. "May Lauren and I play on the bed with Lambo?" Carmen asked her daddy as soon as I got there. We promised not to make any noise. "That will be the day," her daddy said. "The last time you and Lauren played on the bed with Lambo, you laughed so loud people heard you all the way to the other side of the Nile." And then he pulled Carmen to his lap and kissed her. "Go ahead," he said. "As tired as I am, I'll sleep through an earthquake. Since Moses came back, all of us who make bricks have had to work twice as hard. We still have to make the same number of bricks, but now we have to gather our own straw as well." So Carmen and Lambo and I all three played on her bed until midnight and then went to sleep. Her father had already gone to work when we woke the next morning. We ate breakfast and jumped rope a little while, and then I went home. I was eager to get home so I could tell Daddy that Carmen told me about the frogs was true. I was also eager to ask if I could have a pet lamb. After all, I did not want him thinking that I already knew he was planning to get me one. But when I got home, he and Mother were so busy swatting mosquitoes that I did not say a word about anything. "Stay back," Daddy shouted. "The mosquitoes are eating us alive." One came after me, but I dodged. "Where are the frogs?" I asked. Piled in our backyard, Daddy said. They died, but the mosquitoes are now driving us crazy. There were no frogs at Carmen's house, I said, and there are no mosquitoes there when I left this morning. Then you might as well go back, he said. You'll be eaten alive if you stay here. So off I went and spent another night with Carmen and Lambo. The next day when I came back home, I could smell something dead before I got halfway there. Daddy and Mother were still swatting things, but not mosquitoes. The mosquitoes were gone, but the flies were there in the house, and the yard, and everywhere else. What's that terrible smell? I asked. Dead frogs, Daddy said. That's where the flies are coming from. I know why all this is happening, I said. Carmen's daddy told me. Daddy stopped swatting flies and came to where I was. Do you expect me to believe that a Hebrew slave tells you, he said. What Carmen's daddy said is true, I said. There were no frogs or mosquitoes or flies. There flies where the slaves live, and he told me why. He said God was going to make life miserable for all of Egypt until Pharaoh let the slaves go free. Your friend Carmen is a sweet girl, Daddy said, but if their God has any power, why are they still slaves? I watched them swat at flies while I backed away. May I spend the night again at Carmen's? I asked. You might as well, Daddy said. There are flies all in our house and on our food and everywhere else. I went to my room to change into another dress and get something else to sleep in. As soon as I got to Carmen's house, her father told me something else that was going to happen. So I rushed back home to tell Daddy. Back already? Daddy asked. I came to get the donkey so I can tie him to a tree where the slaves live, I said. Carmen's daddy said God was going to make the animals die at midnight tonight unless they were where the slaves live. Sweetheart, Daddy said, laughing, put the donkey in his stable and go back and play jump rope with Carmen and her pet lamb. Her father makes strange noises to all their... Her father makes up strange stories to make their God look powerful when he's not powerful at all. If any donkeys die tonight, it will be theirs and not ours. I went back, but we did not play that night. Carmen almost cried when we got into bed, and she snuggled up close to Lambo. I feel sorry for all the little goats and lambs and other animals Egyptian boys and girls have for pets, she said. They're going to die at midnight tonight. What she said came true, but I did not know until I got home. As soon as I woke up, I ran home as fast as I could. Mother saw me coming and rushed out to meet me. Your father is very upset, she said. The donkey is dead. I went straight to the barn. Daddy was scratching like mad while he stared at the dead donkey. I wanted to tell him that none of the animals died where the Hebrews lived, but I was afraid to say anything. Finally, he looked up and saw me. Do not get near the dead donkey, he said. You might catch whatever made it die. I could tell he was sad, and I wish I knew why. I mean, he was sad about losing the donkey, or was sad that now he'd have to buy another donkey with the money he had saved to buy me a pet lamb with. Or was he sad because of what was making him itch so? I did not know what to say or ask. I just stood and stared. Go back to Carmen's house, he said. Sores are breaking out all over me. It might be from mosquito bites or the flies, or it might be from touching the dead donkey. Anyway, I do not want you to get sores on you, so go back and spend another night at Carmen's house. I wanted to go and hug him and tell him that I loved him, but he stopped me and said, "Stay back," he said. "You might get sores on you." I went back to Carmen's house. May I spend the night with you again? I asked when I got there. Yes, she said, but first you better run back and tell your daddy to cover up what he does not want destroyed in a hailstorm is coming. I ran and told Daddy, but he only laughed. Everything that has happened so far can be explained, he said. Frogs come out of the river because the water turned red and smelled bad. It looked like blood and smelled like blood, and the frogs crawled out, but the fish could not. They died. When the fish died, there was nothing left in the river to eat the things that grow into mosquitoes, so we ended up with a lot of mosquitoes. Then the frogs died because they could not find enough food, and that brought the flies. Flies make things sick, and that's why the donkey died. He laughed again while he looked up the sky. If hailstones fall out of the sky, where will they come from? There's not a cloud up there. And then he looked back at me. The Hebrew slaves want their God to get credit, so they make up strange stories about what is happening. I spent the night again with Carmen. The next day when I went back home, I saw pieces of ice as big as watermelon all over our front yard. Everything was knocked down, even trees. On top of all that, grasshoppers were eating what the hailstorm knocked down. Where did all these grasshoppers come from? I asked. I have no idea, Daddy said, but I'm about to get sick of whatever is going on. If the Hebrew God is causing all this simply because the Pharaoh will not let the slaves go free, then I'm about ready to free the slaves myself. Not only did the grasshoppers eat everything knocked to the ground, but when they flew away, they stirred up so much dust we could not see for 3 days. We stayed inside all 3 days because it took that long for the dust to settle. Finally, we walked outside and looked around. I cannot believe what is happening, Daddy said. Something strange is going on. Carmen's dad said that this would happen, I said. I expected Daddy to say what he usually said when I talked about Moses and the things that were happening, but this time he stayed quiet. He shook his head in amazement while he looked all around, and then he walked to me and put his arm around me. I'm glad Carmen is your friend, he said. Go and thank her for telling us ahead of time what's going to take place. I pulled away from him and started out. And find out what's going to happen next, he shouted. May we jump rope with Lambo, I asked Carmen when I got there. No, she said. I have Lambo locked in my room. I do not want anyone to know he is here. Moses told each family to kill a lamb and prepare it along with other things, and be ready to eat quickly and leave in a hurry. Some families might not have a lamb, and if they see Lambo, they might kill her. I remembered that Daddy asked me to find what was going to happen next. Why does every family have to kill a lamb? Something bad is going to happen, she said. When she told me what was going to happen, I ran all the way home. I was so tired I had to wait a while before I could talk. Why are you out of breath? Is Carmen all right? I finally got to where I could talk. She's all right, I said, but I'm going to die. And then I started crying. Daddy picked me up and held me tight. Nothing's going to happen to Daddy's big girl, he said. Let her finish telling us, Mother said. So far, everything that's happened the way Carmen's daddy said it would. Daddy held me a little longer and then put me down. The Hebrew slaves are getting ready to run away, I said. They're going to kill lambs and cook the meat and be ready to leave in a hurry. Why do you think you're going to die? Daddy asked. Are they going to kill Egyptians before they're running away? They're going to take the blood of the lambs and sprinkle it around the door frames to their houses, I said. At midnight, the firstborn in every home that does not have blood over the doorframe will die. I'm the only child in this family. That means I'm the oldest. It also means that I will die. And then I started crying again. I waited for Daddy to say something, but he stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, he looked directly at me. Stay here until I get back, he said. He went out inside the house and came back with a cup. Take this to Carmen, he said. When they kill the lambs, ask her to put some blood in it. You are her best friend. She will not let you die. He gave me a light push. Hurry, bring back some blood, he said. I stayed gone so long, Mother and Daddy probably thought I was not coming back. The first thing I saw when I got there was a lamb Carmen's dad had tied to a tree. He was also building a fire. Carmen and I stayed in her room with Lambo, but we watched from the window. Daddy is building a fire because we have to roast the meat over a fire. We have to eat it with the bitter herbs and a bread made without yeast. We have to be fully dressed and ready to take off as soon as we finish eating. I could hear people talking, and they're saying such bad things about Egyptians that I did not dare let them know I was Egyptian. I kept my cup hidden until they killed the lamb, and even then I did not ask for any blood. I waited until I could get some without anybody seeing me. It was almost midnight, and I was afraid I was not going to get blood in time to keep me from dying. Finally, Carmen's daddy sprinkled blood over the doorframe to their house. When I saw a drop about to fall, I held out my cup and caught it, and then I took off running for home and just barely made it there by midnight. I only got one drop, I said, and I gave the cup to Daddy. I was afraid to wait for more because the firstborn start dying at midnight, and it's almost midnight. Daddy looked in the cup. If one drop is all we have, then one drop will have to do, he said. Beside the amount of blood is not what is important. The important thing is how strongly he believed. He walked to the front of the house and looked at the top of the doorframe. We will put it here, he said. He reached a finger into the cup, got the one drop of blood, and smeared it over the doorframe. And then he picked me up and held me close to the drop of blood. There it is, he said. We can now sleep without being afraid. The Hebrew God will not let anything bad happen to us. You are Carmen's best friend, and she will ask her God to protect you. I'm going to pray also, I said. Carmen prays every night. One night she let me listen, and I'm going to say the same thing she said. We went to bed, but not asleep long. Just as the sun was coming up, we heard screaming and shouting all around us. We got dressed and rushed outside to see what was going on. A crowd of people carrying sticks and rocks were shouting ugly things at the Hebrew slaves. Get out of Egypt, they yelled. You are the ones causing this trouble. They shouted bad things over and over, and they threw sticks and rocks at them. There is Carmen, and she has Lambo with her, I said, pointing. Mother and Daddy looked, and Carmen had one end of her jump rope around Lambo's neck and was holding the other. I wanted to run and tell her bye, but I was afraid of the sticks and the rocks the people were throwing. I almost cried when I saw Carmen and Lambo leaving. I wanted lamb like Lambo, but now I knew I would never get one. I looked up at Daddy and saw tears in both eyes, and I knew why. He wanted to get a lamb for me just like Lambo, but could not. He would have to spend all his money to buy another donkey. Just then, a man next to me threw a stick. It almost hit Lambo. Carmen looked to see who threw the stick, and when she did, she saw me and came running, pulling Lambo behind her. I'm glad I saw you, she said. I kept looking for you, but never saw you. She handed me her end of the rope. You may have Lambo, she said. I'm afraid once we get out in the desert, somebody might get hungry and kill and eat her. Besides, she's not used to being out in the desert. Daddy picked Carmen up and hugged her. Do not worry about your pet lamb. Lauren will take good care of her. She even put perfume on her and brushed her with her hairbrush and let her sleep in bed, just like you do. Then he kissed her on the cheek and put her down. Carmen took off running and caught up with her mother and father. She turned and waved, and I waved back, and that was the last time I saw her. Even though I was sad to see my best friend leave, that turned out to be the happiest day of my life. I was glad finally to have a pet lamb, but that was not the thing that made me the most happy. I was glad that Daddy finally believed in the Hebrew God, but that was not the thing that made me most happy. The truth is, I always thought he believed one day. The thing that made me the happiest was knowing that the same blood that saved a whole nation of people saved me also, and all I had was one drop. Okay, boys and girls, I said, that is the story about how I started out with frogs and ended up with a pet lamb. Make certain you read it in your own Bibles. You will find it in Exodus. The bell rang and we all went to class. Since the Bible was written for adults, children can lose interest quickly when reading it or having it read to them. So just as Jesus taught spiritual lessons with parables, Art Compere weaves Bible facts into stories while main characters are children. At the end, he tells where to find the story in the Bible so you can read it for themselves. And there you go. That was Lauren Tells a Bible Story by Art Compere.